Nathan, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me back on. Appreciate it.
So, interesting times for SEO, right?
Very, very.
Very.
Yeah, it's had to modify some of my strategy since the last time we talked, so we can get into into that if you'd
Yeah,
like.
absolutely.
So,
That's what I was wanting to talk about. How you're changing your approach, but also, I guess let's start from the top. What have you noticed? There's so many things to talk about, actually. What have you noticed where people have fared well out of this, or not so fared well in terms of publishers or website owners?
yeah, I'm gonna try to walk a very delicate line here because I know a lot of people, let's just start with the most obvious fact. It never feels good to get penalized. So that never feels good. That never feels good. No matter what type of business you have, whether it's a content site or a traditional business, a business is a business. If you're generating income beyond, I think, at what $600 a year in the U.S., you are considered a business. Okay, so so I personally have had many sites penalized myself over the decade that I've been doing this. When I first started, I was much more on the gray hat side. So I know how it feels. It does not feel good to wake up in the morning and see your traffic gone. It's not exactly the best way to start your morning. So I know how that feels. But at the same time, there are just certain qualities of sites that continue to survive these updates. And this has been consistent. I mean, I've been through so many cycles at this point, and there's one thing that's been consistent through all cycles. Number one, actually, there's many things, but the biggest one I'll say here is overall site authority. Okay, that's one thing that when you look across all the updates, very rarely do you see a DR80 website getting hit. It just does not happen very often. Okay, it's extremely rare. Like in that pool of sites, it's very rare that a site that's even honestly probably DR70 and above. And I'm using Ahrefs in this case, but that could also be SEMrush's authority score, whatever else you want to use. But really high authority sites that have really strong link profiles tend to be able to weather any storms that come their way. Okay, so that's kind of like the first part. When you look at a lot of the content sites that get hit, usually they're lacking in that department. That's one thing where a lot of them will be low, really low authority. They may have a lot of content, but as far as link authority, it's usually there's a deficit. And so that's the one area where I like to focus is see like, okay, how much of a deficit do we have relative to the websites that are ranking in that particular vertical? And usually there's a big gap, typically. So that's kind of the first part. The second part, and this is more just my purely anecdotal, just based on me actually doing SEO and studying different verticals and different SERPs and everything that I see. The sites, and I'm not even talking about sites that necessarily went up during the updates, right? They didn't necessarily grow, but they didn't move. Okay. And I actually like to see that. Like they just didn't move. They weren't affected. They didn't go up or down. They just kind of stayed the same. The sites that are in that bucket, 9 out of 10 are real businesses. So the example I'll give you is in the e-commerce space. There's several coffee brands. Okay. You have Black Rifle Coffee, Death Wish Coffee, Pete's Coffee. You have these different coffee brands. And if you look at their organic keyword profile, it stays pretty much flat or went up after the updates. Now, of course, this is one very isolated scenario. But if you look in that particular industry, any other site that was not an actual business that actually sold coffee, like if they just wrote coffee reviews or they reviewed, different types of espresso, whatever it is, they didn't actually sell something, but they referred people out of their website to another vendor. Those are the ones that suffered the most. And it was like pretty consistent in that regard. So I'd say those two things like seem to be the two variables that influence the most, like site authority from links and then brand authority seems to be kind of those two things that, at least in my opinion, seem to be pretty influential. So
when you say site authority from links, that's like domain rating authority or domain authority, and then you've got authority through branding. You mean e-commerce businesses? Is that what you mean?
Correct. Yeah. So on the link side, this is where it gets a little nuanced because I want to be careful not to generalize here. So um, because it's easy to manipulate the third party metrics. So you can go to Fiverr and you could get a DR 50 overnight, right? So that is absolutely not the criteria. That's more of just like that's the baseline criteria to say, okay, this site has authority. Now let's investigate the link profile further and see, is the link profile, like, are they getting links from high quality entities? Are those links relevant? Like, are they actually an authority in their particular vertical? That's where you start to kind of get, narrow it down and see the quality of those of that link profile. Um, Also, the way that those links are acquired as well, right? That's another part of it too. Like, some people, they may have that clean link profile, but it was acquired through buying links, and the way that they purchased those links left a massive footprint because they were driving links to pages that did not have any link intent. They were driving links to pages that were highly transactional, did not deserve links, and they left a massive footprint. So, because when you study sites that do get links naturally and passively, most of the links they're getting are going to things that actually deserve links. So, it could be free resource, free tools, free software. It could be data. It could be just informational content, whatever it may be. But usually, very rarely, are you going to see natural links going to, affiliate review pages, category pages, product pages, or local lead generation pages. Like that is not normal. And so that footprint is very obvious. So there's some nuance on it, right? There's some little, and then of course you could talk about anchor text diversity and things of that nature as well. But there's a lot of stuff to unpack on that front. Yeah, do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, also to add to the natural, building them naturally. Obviously, the search engines aren't going to want to see, you know, overnight, your links have just increased hugely. You know, it's a SEO is a long game, and you want to play the long game with not just like linking to high brandable pages that aren't just money pages, that are actually adding value, and then they'll trickle on through eventually. You build your brand first and your trust first. That's how you should do that in business and life before you go away and seal a deal or close a deal with somebody. That's how life works. That's how business should work, is build that trust first and play the long game. So acquiring, even if you were able to build a lot of links naturally to great pages on your site and it looked great with anchor text diversity, it's doing it too fast is a scary thing as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are some scenarios where like a high velocity of links could be natural,
Mm,
right? It could, like, in some small scenarios, like if you did some advertising campaign or some marketing campaign that attracted a very high volume amount of links in a short amount of
mm,
time. So like I helped this one client and they came up with like this. I don't want to get too specific to reveal them, but they came up with like basically a position at their company that was very unique. Okay, like a position within their team, and they marketed this particular position on their careers page. And this thing just acquired. It was basically a PR move, and it just acquired so many links. Oh, like overnight, they just skyrocketed their link authority and obviously the link velocity. And it benefited them majorly. Like, their organic traffic climbed at the same speed of the link
wow.
acquisition. But that's like the 0.01% of
Mm,
scenarios, right? Most scenarios, there's that type of link velocity is usually artificially driven, and it's usually easy to detect. And I always like to say, like, I'm just one person who can open up a little tool and like be able to see that someone is manipulating Google through links.
yeah,
Like, if I can do it, Google can definitely
yeah,
do it, right? That's the way that I think of it. Like, I'm just one guy, right? And they're $1 trillion company. I would assume the $1 trillion company can figure out these patterns, these footprints, and I know they can because I've gone really aggressive on the link building side in the past, and I've been penalized, right? And I was even trying to avoid footprints. So, there's certain things where they have the capabilities. So yeah, I think in most scenarios, link velocity is probably a dangerous game to play, but just kind of that like 1% or
yeah,
less where it might be
yeah.
beneficial.
So take it with the slower approach. Obviously, I guess is build links and build authority. We're not. Google says it's not about the links to probably not build them like. naturally, and that's not what we're prescribing in a certain way. You want to do it in a natural way, but that we have seen, and you have seen, and a lot of other people have seen that links has helped, and like you said, favored or not been affected sites that have that high authority. So what else? How would you? I mean, how would you go about a link building strategy for a site that has been affected? Or actually, no. Let me ask this as a better question. What sort of sites would you work on as an SEO that you can get results on, and what sort of sites would you not work on that you are not too sure you could get results on after these changes in March 2024? And I ask this on the basis of people that have been hit and are wondering, what do we do? And this, I want to caveat this, your answer. Nobody should be able to hold Nathan accountable for what he says here. Every single site is completely different and nuanced in its own way. And I dare say what you are going to say, Nathan, is pretty general, but maybe just a little bit of an ideology for people that are thinking about what should we do moving forwards.
I mean, everyone's has their different qualification process for working on campaigns, right? And for me, my process is pretty strict. I very rarely will take on a campaign unless I think it's basically going to be a done deal as far as the success possibility. If I don't believe that I can actually generate a return on investment for a campaign, I won't even take it on. It's just not worth it. So let's talk about what a campaign may look like that I would say I would not be able to generate an ROI on. Now, first of all, I charge much more than the average person. Okay. So that has to be taken into consideration first. Like I charge much more. So therefore to get an ROI, there has to be that bigger gap, right? And I'm looking at like a 10-to-1 type of ratio, right? If they invest, $10,000, they make 100,000, 200,000, that type of thing, right? It's that type of return on investment I'm looking for. If it's really narrow and I don't feel like it can get there, then I just won't do it. Now, there's a couple things I'm looking at. I don't want to get too like an agency side, but this is a part of the process to qualify a campaign, and there is certain details. So like one of the details is how many SEO companies have they worked with? The company itself. I love to ask that question, like how many companies have you worked with? And if I hear the answer, well, we've worked with 7 companies in the last 7 years, I'm going to say, I'm not going to be number 8. So I'll refer you out to someone else. This is not my thing, because all that tells me is that they're not committed, right? Because at a certain point, like in every industry, there are bad actors. In every industry, it's the bell curve, right? It's just the nature that most SEO agencies are average. Just a fact. Like that's just in any industry, that's how it's going to be. However, if you've hired 10 different SEO companies, the likelihood that all 10 are average or below average, it starts to get pretty low, right? There had to have been at least just one in there that was decent, right? Like, or above average. So when I see that high volume of switching because it's so hard, like SEO is very difficult. Like I've been doing SEO on like my own personal website, gotchaseo.com, for a long time. Like I started doing SEO on it in like 2014, right? Like, and I still just like, and I don't do aggressive SEO on it, but I just that's how long you have to be committed to this. Like we're talking 5 years, 10 years. Like honestly, and honestly, when I ask people, like, they ask me, well, how long is it going to take? And I'm going to say, well, you should view SEO as like you do this until either, you're no longer on earth, your business goes out, or you get acquired. Like that, like that's it. Like there's no like, let's just do it for 3 months and then stop and then through another 3 months. And it just doesn't work like that. Like it's constant. It's every month. It's all the time. It never ends, because every single keyword that you go after is its own individual battle that requires its own individual strategy. And I think people view it as like, oh, we're going to do SEO. Yay. Let's just all do SEO. And it's this broad kind of like umbrella of things But really, if you break it down, like you pick one keyword that you can actually compete on, and that's one individual battle against a variable set of competitors that is going to be different for every keyword that you go after. So it's never the same. And it just requires constant iteration and change. So that's one of the questions I like to ask because it reveals a lot, right? It reveals a lot for me. Now, the other thing is before I even get on a call with anyone, and I don't do a lot of discovery calls anymore, but when I did get on a lot of discovery calls, the first thing I do before I even talk to them is I look at their situation, right? I look at their site. I see what their organic keyword profile looks like. I see their volatility over time. I look at their link profile. And if I see like the biggest thing for me that I will typically, that will scare me off is aggressive traffic declines. If I see like they've really been hit super hard, unfortunately, like, if you dig yourself into a grave, okay, you have to dig you have to climb out of that grave, right? And to climb out of that grave just gets you to the ground. It doesn't get you to where you need to go. So that's why for me, I don't want to be the person digging out of the grave. And then finally we get to ground level where now we can actually do some stuff. But the problem is, this is no offense to any, yeah, and there's no offense to any business owners. I know it's difficult and everyone wants to get a return as fast as possible, but the problem is like every business owner wants an ROI yesterday. And when you tell them, it's going to take 6 months for us to just get out of this grave that was built over the last 7 years of you doing SEO, like it's going to take 6 to 12 months just to get us into actually play on the field, right? And I always tell people that I straight up tell them like you have a long journey ahead of you, and so of course I'm willing to help you, but I can't have the expectation that this is going to be an overnight situation. So I'm looking at those type of things, and this is why I don't take on many clients, right? Because I'm looking for someone who has realistic expectations, and then it also depends too on like the type of business that they are. So we will take on local campaigns where we handle the whole campaign, right? Like from end to end, we're doing everything. We're doing keyword research and creating the content and even doing a little bit of design and doing the link acquisition. Like we're doing everything. It's an all-in-one type of service. But other times, if I'm talking to like a SaaS company, I need to know what their resources are, right? And usually, depending on their size, if they're bigger, they'll typically have copywriters and developers in-house. So then it's kind of a different situation, and I may be more intrigued to work with them because they have the resources to be able to scale and do things that I need them to do. If they've got like one copywriter or one developer, and I know it's going to be a huge bottleneck, that's going to be a no-go for me. So yeah, I probably threw a lot at you there, but that's just the way my mind works when I go through discovery.
No, it's great. It's great to see that play long-term games with long-term people in SEO. It's the way to win in business and life. And moving forwards, you've said you've changed your strategies. Have you changed them significantly? And if so, how? And what sort of strategies are you focusing on more so now as this environment has changed versus what you may have been focusing on prior to, September 2023 and March 2024?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like as far as my overall broad SEO process, it stayed pretty consistent as far as the kind of the cadence that I go through in a campaign. So it obviously begins with keyword research, and then I, build a keyword database, qualify those keywords, prioritize those keywords. That's has stayed pretty much the same. Now, with some new developments with SG, Google SG coming, obviously, and it's been rolled out quite a bit so far. I will have some CTR considerations in my keyword research process, right? Because of that, which means I'm basically going to be looking at like when we go and look at prioritizing keywords, we'll see if SG is being served up. And if it is being served up, I have to decrease my click estimates for that keyword, right? So if I thought that keyword was going to get, let's say, 100 clicks a month, because of SGE, maybe I'll drop that down to 60, right? It's just a arbitrary kind of thing, but just try to figure out like, okay, let's just prepare for potential click loss. And it's just smart to do because it can help you kind of estimate that ROI a little more on the conservative side, right? So that's one thing and that honestly, that really isn't different than what it was before, because like I was still doing that even with featured snippets and instant answers and all the other things that Google throws at you, at huge ad blocks. So I've always considered CTR. So as far as that goes, keyword research, and then immediately going into doing audit, and then prioritizing the technical SEO opportunities, and then going in and optimizing existing assets, so pages that already are alive, making them better, upgrading them, optimizing them, creating new assets to build topic authority. And then the next piece, there's kind of a secondary part of that, is building linkable assets. So assets that are specifically designed, and we can talk about more specifically, but assets specifically designed to acquire links, to function more as link bait. And then the final piece of that is to go out and actually promote those assets to relevant websites. Now, if it's local, we also add obviously Google Business Profile and citations, all that good stuff. But that's basically the process. So at a high level, that process has not changed. It's exact same process that I go through. Now, within each of those little elements, though, there's a lot of things that have been changed for the better, actually, as far as my profitability. Okay, so because with AI, you can just do so much now at a speed that you really couldn't do before. And it's even small things like we can talk about a lot of different ways to use AI within the SEO process, but like even small things like having ChatGPT build you Google Sheet formulas. Okay, like I know it seems very simple and very basic, but like sometimes you have this idea for a formula and you're like, I can't even fathom how to build this thing. You put that scenario into ChatGPT, it builds the formula for you. You go into Google Sheets, you test it, and you keep going back and forth. Eventually, you get it, and you're like, "Whoa! I just like automated like something that was really annoying." And you would have never been able to do that before, right? You would have had to find some Google Sheets person like who even does stuff like that. Like you couldn't even find someone, like I don't even know who you'd find. So but now it's like you have this sidekick who can help you solve a lot of kind of like you didn't even know who to ask to solve it at that point. So now you can do that. And we can get in more details of that, but it's just like one small kind of thing that has helped massively.
So what I hear is basically you're still doing the same thing, but in different way, and you put different levels of resources into each sort of thing. Are you going for more keywords now or less keywords and putting more of the budget into less keywords, or was that already something you're already doing? And then what's the ratio of like? I guess this is going to depend on the site and the business what it needs, but typically do the more resources go into building assets for click or for link bait to build up that authority and make that like the real foundation that the keywords can rank on? Is that how you're looking at it? That's how I would probably look at it.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the type of website that we're working on. So if I'm working on a site that's completely new, like fresh out of the box, like we have our software rankability that we're building, a brand new domain. Okay, so my mentality with that domain is radically different than a gotchaseo.com that's over 10 years old, has tons of links, right? Totally different mentality. So I'll start with a new website, and then we'll transition to an existing site. So for a new website, my number one, like I am laser focused on building site authority. That's the only thing that matters to me with a new site. How do we grow this site authority as fast as humanly possible? Because I know there's many different philosophies, many different ways to quote unquote skin a cat, right? Like everyone's got their own way of doing things. This is just the way I do things, because I believe that links are very important. It's just my opinion. Okay. And I've just seen that anecdotally and through a lot of data. But I need to build that site authority, because if I can lift site authority, then every asset that I build after that is going to perform much better. But what I see a lot of people do is they start a brand new website and they build out a bunch of content, and there's no link support on any of that content. And it just kind of like doesn't do anything. And that's not, it's not the content that's a problem. It's the fact that the website has no trust and authority. So what I want to do is I want to narrow, like I want to attack that deficit that you have. That's the biggest deficit of all. Get that squared away to a point where I think like, okay, we've got some traction here. Now I can start to kind of increase that content velocity as far as targeting specific keywords. Now, for me, I'm pretty. Yeah, go ahead. Yep. Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm pretty extreme about this with a new website because I'll typically only I'll build out like 3 to 5 linkable assets, roughly, like 3 to 5. And then I'll spend the next 6 months or so just focusing on promoting those like crazy. And that's it. I won't do anything else. Like, I don't even care about traffic necessarily. All I care about is just building support, support, support. Because my long term ambition is once I've got that support, now I'm going to start to publish keyword driven assets. And I know because I have a site authority, they're going to rank on the second page as soon as I publish them, right? As opposed to ranking on page 9 when I publish them. So
yeah, that was going to be my next question, is like how many pieces of content do you publish, or keywords do you put out there, or assets you would call them, assets in terms of valuable assets for people that are coming to the site to use, and use them as link bait again. I love that approach. It's really an evergreen strategy versus like, let's just throw a bunch of keywords at this and see what ranks, and then once we see what ranks, then we'll start to go for more keywords in that space, and then that can all be taken away by one person or one other website that has an authority and goes, oh, I'm going to rank for this now, which is basically what you're saying, is like when you already have the authority and you want to rank for a keyword, you have confidence that you can rank for it straight away over maybe hundreds or thousands of other websites that are maybe a niche site in that space that have a lot of keywords or topical authority around it, but no real foundation for it to sit on in terms of like domain authority or brand authority, right?
correct. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you could technically do the keyword driven approach like initially with the new website, but the challenge is even if you do that, you're still going to have to drive links to that keyword driven asset to make up the deficit that you have. And that actually introduces a lot more risk because now you're driving like it doesn't look very good. And it's much better to get links to assets that clearly deserve, like for example, if you built out some sort of free tool on your website, like that thing getting a lot of links is very natural. It's a very natural thing that occurs. And then you can easily just piggyback off that authority and lift all the other assets. So I believe topic authority is definitely a thing. But I think it's overblown a little bit. I think people focus a little too much on let's just produce a lot of content and they don't think about like it's like if it was just as easy as publishing a lot of content, there'd be a lot of rich SEOs. It's just like it's not that
Because it's
easy.
cheaper.
If it was
I
that
just want to
easy,
highlight that for people listening. The reason all these SEOs would be so rich is because it's very cheap to produce a lot of content, and it's a lot more expensive to build links and topical authority and build a good campaign out. And your margins would be
it's
far
hard to
better.
build it's hard to build a
Yeah,
brand. Yeah, it's hard to build a brand. It's not easy. It's very, very difficult. And it's easy. Anyone can just go into ChatGPT and overnight could produce hundreds of articles. So there's not a whole lot of value in just words, right? There's more nuance that's required there. And we haven't even talked about how to develop SEO content, which is actually keyword driven content. Some people freak out about the term SEO content, like, oh, that's too focused on like driving organic traffic. But I just say SEO content to differentiate from link bait. Those are the two differentiators for me. So SEO content, in my opinion, is just any page that's built around a keyword.
which would you also call that a linkable asset? Is that what you would call a linkable asset as well?
They can there is some blending that can occur. Like you could technically have a linkable asset that is targeting a keyword as well. But there are occasionally linkable assets that I build that are not built around a keyword. So for example, it might be like uh, car accident statistics in Chesterfield, Missouri. Okay. You're not going to go into the tools and find search volume around that. It's just not going to exist. Yeah, but is a reporter potentially searching that to get some data about some study that they're doing? Potentially, right? So that's what I like to do is I like to put a lot of lines in the ocean and hopefully some of those start to pick up some passive links. I mean, this is where I really start to geek out. So we can go whatever direction you want, but yeah.
All right. Well, SEO content. You mentioned SEO content. What is SEO content to you?
I mean, I just define it as any page or post, if you want to call it that, that is built around a specific keyword phrase. That's it. So like it's literally designed to bring in organic traffic from Google. It could also be designed to bring in organic traffic from YouTube, right? I mean, some people, we think of search engines, we just think of Google, but you've got YouTube and you've got Amazon, you've got Etsy, you've got TikTok, and like there's a lot of search engines out there. So, but it always stems from like some type of asset that is built around a topic or keyword.
I love it. I agree. Optimizing only for Google is a risk. Um,
Very.
so, in saying that, where do you see this landscape of SEO changing for and evolving with how different companies may come and go? I'm not insinuating on anything at all in that question, but yeah, how do you see the landscape evolving in the next sort of 2 to 5 years in terms of who might be winning in the search game?
It's so I try to be very, very careful with not going down the dark, like on either side, right? Because like it's easy to go the pessimist route, right? Oh, okay, Google's gonna die and things are gonna get worse and SEO is gonna die. Like that's one route that people will take. And the other route is put your head in the sand and just pretend like nothing's happening. So I try to go somewhere in the middle there
Agreed.
because I don't want to go,
Yeah, let me give
so,
give a bit of context to my question. Not because I want to create some fear mongering media in this with this podcast, is more so that people can sort of see what's coming down the pike to optimize, to be able to put themselves in front of the right audience to give them more value and serve at a better rate. That's more so the context of the question.
For sure. Yeah. So the reason I kind of framed it that way is because I just try to be careful not to look too far into the future because unfortunately, as you have experienced the last couple of years, things are changing so fast that it almost makes your head spin. I mean, just like from when ChatGPT launched, what was that, November 2023 or no, 2022? It was 2022. And like to now, it's mind blowing how fast things have changed in that regard, as far as like technological advancements. But as far as SEO goes, for me, I just look at the cold hard facts. Try to remove my emotion out of it. Try to remove my like my crystal ball type of behavior. Like, and when you look at the facts and you look at who dominates search, Google has 90% of the search market share. Like literally today, they have 90% of the search market share. The second biggest website on the internet is YouTube, which they also own. And you want to talk about like monopoly? YouTube is the biggest monopoly that they have by far. There is not a single competitor that they have. I think they have like, it's like 97% of the video market share. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. So when you look at it, not even just from like a search perspective, but Google, like the two most popular websites on the internet are Google and YouTube. Like, I mean, so for that to shift would require just huge things for that to shift. And even if it were, we're talking 5-10 year battle for that to transpire. And, at this point, like, that's too long for me to care about. So, like, and by the way, I don't have any allegiances to Google at all. Like, I do SEO. I'm not, an ally of Google. I don't care. If another search engine comes in or another type of platform comes in, I will drop Google in a second without any emotion at all. I just go, my opinion is I just go wherever the attention and the demand is. And right now, Google has all the attention and all the search demand, and that's where people go. It's a freaking verb. I mean, like, it's going to be very hard, very, very hard for someone to chop away at their market share.
Yeah,
So,
when the way I
so
think
yeah,
about the traffic from Google is the level of intent of buying and making a decision to go a certain route. If I'm going to go away and try and learn something that's going to be valuable to me, that's going to help me make a purchasing decision, I'm not going to go to Chat GPT. I'm not going to go to any other search engine. Right? I'm not going to go to Facebook. I'm not going to go anywhere other than Google. And that's why Google is just a beast, because they help brands put themselves in front of the people that are asking for their help and their service. Yeah. And it's just it is amazing what they've created.
Yeah, well, and I think that the high intent is what makes it. Obviously, I'm extremely biased when I say this, but I believe SEO is one of the best marketing channels because of what you just described. Like, you have high intent traffic. It's just very different than when, you're on your phone and you're scrolling through TikTok and then boom, you get hit with some dorky SEO guy like me saying, "Here's how to do keyword research." And you're like, "What? I was just looking at UFC videos." Like, what? It's such a different situation, right? It's totally different. And of course there is search on TikTok and the other platforms, but it just is not, it's not the same. Like, people go to Google for clear, there's commercial intent. Now, I will say there's a few industries that I would be very scared if I was doing SEO in them. Okay. There's a few I would like. One of them is e-commerce. I have a lot of friends who are in the e-commerce SEO space, and like a lot of people that I work with, and it's just really tough out there because Google's just eating up clicks. Like the traditional results, like traditional top, like the 10 blue links, they don't exist a whole lot in the e-commerce space. Like, if you look up, best Nike baseball cleats or best baseball cleats or something, like there's all kinds of SERP features going on. And on top of it, I'm just speaking from my personal experience. Like, when I want to buy something like that's like a physical item, I just go directly to Amazon. Like, I don't go to Google. Like, I just go straight to Amazon.com and I just buy stuff there. Like, when it comes to e-commerce, really, like, that's just my behavior. And I can't be the only one, right? I've talked to other people and like they're like, "Yeah, I don't use Google to, if I'm gonna get like, I don't know, some household thing, like I'm not gonna go to Google. Like, I'm just gonna go to Amazon, So there's just a lot of kind of nuanced stuff
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
I would say it's different in different countries. Amazon in America is phenomenal compared to what it is in Australia. So I will use Google to. I'll just go to Google and type in what I want and click shopping, and then it will pop up if it's cheapest or best value for money. It'll pop up with Amazon and then a few other ones, and that'll make my decision. But I see what you're saying in terms of in e-commerce. It's very much like what Facebook pages were. As an example, back in the day, you could get, a lot of traffic, organic traffic from your Facebook page. And then Facebook realized that was a thing and they turned it into a pay to play game. Whereas Google is starting to do the same thing as like, as an SEO or doing SEO for your e-commerce brand. It has worked for a very long period of time and it's been great. A lot of people have fared well out of like these changes in the last year. Um, Obviously, though, the people with the deeper pockets, Google's going to take their money, and if they're willing to pay to play, they're going to put them at the top. And is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, I mean that's a part of it too. It's also just like the general SERP makeup has changed so much. Like, and this isn't just ecom, but it's also locally as well. Like, ranking in the traditional results in local is almost pointless in some scenarios because if you look at some local search, and I'm speaking purely US, by the way. This could be very different in other versions of Google, but at least the .com version that I work in, you're gonna have traditional ads, Google ads, which will probably push most of the results down below the fold. Then above that, you're gonna have, in some cases, in only in some niches, you'll have local service ads. So you got one block traditional, then we got local service ads, which is typically two local service providers in there. And then you'll have the local pack. And within the local pack, you'll have an ad in the local pack. And then you'll finally get to the organic local pack, which is that top three. Then once you're finally below the local pack, now you're at the traditional results. You're at number one, like the number one guy. But when you think about all the different ones, that number one guy realistically is like number 7 or 8, possibly even 10 in some scenarios. So this is why, like, I think some businesses are still living, back in the day in a lot of cases. Like they still think like, oh, let's just rank in the top 10. And like, no, like you can't just rank in the top 10. Like that's not gonna work. Like you have to look at the SERPs and say, no, we need to have an ad. We need to be local service ads. We need to have an ad in the local pack. We need to be in the local pack, and we need to do traditional, SEO. And even when you look at the traditional like top 10 in local, usually have a bunch of other directory sites in there as well. So you're going to have Yelp and the legal directories. You want to show up in those as well. So really, the goal should be like we're going to occupy as much real estate as humanly possible. Like let's just try to occupy as much real estate, because the more real estate that you have, the more CTR you're going to get. It's just a fact, right? So that's the way I try to think about it, is like more this omnipresent type of approach, as opposed to like let's only do SEO and make that our only thing. And it's like, why would you put all your eggs in one basket? Like, I don't even do that in my own business. Like, I have a YouTube channel and Twitter and LinkedIn and email list, and I'm doing an interview. Like, this is the way you got to think about these things. Like, SEO is just one channel, one channel. It's an amazing channel, but I would never tell someone just do YouTube or just do email. Like,
Because then you've got
an
single source
email's so
dependency.
old,
Like you got single source dependency on that one traffic source or revenue
Yep.
source. And I've been burnt hard before. I've told my story about that, and it's just not worth it. So talking about what all these different assets that you have and content that you do, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on. Where can we send people to check out your YouTube channel and your site and rankability?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, you can just go to Nathan Gotch on YouTube. I have a bunch of tons of SEO videos. I'm actually getting close to like 100,000 subscribers, but I think I
Ooh,
have like 200 SEO videos or
cool,
something.
congrats.
So there's a lot of material there. Thank you. And then obviously you can go to gotchaseo.com. That's where I have my training program, Gotcha SEO Academy, and then rankability.com. We have a free trial, so if you want to try out the tool, you can.